Hello, I'm your host, Dr. Darlene Wagner. This video shows the history of transgender and gender non-conforming people who served in the American military. They have been on the front lines since the beginning of our country. On September 20th, 2011, the discriminatory law, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, ended. Gay, lesbian, and bisexual people could now serve in the American military without having to hide their sexual orientation. The change has not hurt the military cohesion or readiness in any way. However, service members who identify as transgender or gender non-conforming still have to remain hidden in order to keep serving their country. Yet, 20 of our allied nations have not had any problems since they have allowed trans people to serve openly in the military, some as early as 1998. Through books and many personal accounts over the past 240 plus years, we have been made aware that transgender and gender non-conforming people have served in every war this nation has fought since the beginning of our country. Why the term gender non-conforming? Because the word transgender has its origin in the middle of the 20th century. So we cannot say that individuals who crossed gender lines to serve in the military before World War II would identify as transgender if they had lived today. However, what makes them interesting is the very fact that they did cross gender lines in the first place. Some, like Albert Cashier, continued to live in a cross-gender role for the rest of their lives. Born in Plimpton, Massachusetts, in December of 1760, Deborah Sampson became the first known gender non-conforming person to have served this country. Early in her life, her father went to sea only to abandon his family. Poor and destitute, her mother had to send her children to live with strangers, so Deborah became a servant for another family. To finally become free, she joined the Continental Army as Robert Shirtliff in May of 1782 and served for 17 months. In later years, when people found out that Deborah served in the military dressed as a man, she received taunts and jeers and heard quotes from Deuteronomy 22:5 in the Bible, which says, "A woman must not wear men's clothing, nor a man wear woman's clothing." In spite of this, the U.S. Department of War issued her a pension in 1803. Later, the Army dubbed her America's First WAC, but those of us in the trans community may also consider her America's first gender non-conforming person to serve in the military. During the War of 1812, a young woman by the name of Lucy Brewer escaped forced prostitution in Boston, changed her name to George Blake, joined the Marines, and served on the USS Constitution for 17 months. She even dressed as a man occasionally after getting out of the military, and once challenged a man to a duel in order to defend a woman's honor. However, records and other accounts from the times discount her stories, and the Marines said she never served. She still lives on in folklore. The Civil War notably had over 400 women who served on either side as men, while many others took on the appearance of men to spy on the enemy. In 1862, one spy for the South, Bella Boyd, provided General Stonewall Jackson the number of Northern troops who approached the Shenandoah Valley, giving the general a considerable victory. Another spy, Pauline Cushman, worked as an actress in New Orleans, and she provided the Union Army with various bits of information throughout the war, occasionally dressing as a man to do so. Sarah Rosetta Wakeman served as a man during the Civil War in Company H of the 153rd New York Volunteers for 2 years under the name Private Lyons Wakeman. In 1862, The aforementioned Albert D.J. Cashier, or Jenny Hodgers, served in the 95th Illinois Infantry Volunteers in 1862 for a full year. She died at the Soldiers and Sailors Home in Quincy, Illinois in 1914, still living as a man. Cashier would have probably been considered a trans man in our time. Cuban-born Loretta Velasquez joined the Confederate Army in 1861 under the name of Harry T. Buford and gained a lieutenant's commission. She became a member of the 21st Louisiana Infantry and even received temporary command when the company's senior officers died in battle. Later in the war, she became a spy for the South, sometimes as Mrs. Williams and sometimes as Harry T. Buford. She died in the 1870s. Canadian-born Sarah Emma Edmonds joined Company C of the Union Army and served as Frank Thompson. She deserted in 1863, took back her female name, and worked as a nurse for the United States Christian Commission. Frances Cleland joined the Union Army in 1861 and served alongside her husband under the name Jack Williams. Her husband died by her side in 1862, but she continued to serve until 1863. She became wounded 3 times and was taken prisoner once. Florina Budman joined the Union Army as a man to fight alongside her husband, but they were both captured and sent here to the notorious Confederate prison camp at Andersonville, Georgia. She died in 1865 of disease and malnutrition. Another woman who was a Union sympathizer by the name of Sarah Melinda Blaylock joined the Confederate Army along with her husband in 1862. With the plan to go over to the Union side as soon as possible, she took on the name of Sam, and she died in 1901. People who knew these Civil War women all said the same thing about them. They grew up as tomboys. This further enhances their image as gender non-conforming women. Another Civil War person, Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, became the first and only woman in American history to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor. Her father believed women should not be required to wear restrictive clothing, so all through Mary's life, she supported clothing reform for women. Many times in her life, she dressed as a man and even got arrested several times for impersonating a man. Dr. Walker graduated from Syracuse Medical College in 1855. During the Civil War, she became an unpaid field surgeon for the Union Army front lines, carrying 2 pistols with her. In 1863, the Army awarded her a commission as a contract acting assistant surgeon. On April 10, 1864, she was captured by Confederate troops and arrested as a spy. Then she was exchanged along with other Union doctors for Confederate doctors. President Andrew Johnson awarded Dr. Walker the Congressional Medal of Honor in 1865. However, in 1917, Congress changed the requirements to earn a Congressional Medal of Honor and asked Dr. Walker to return hers. She never did and kept her medal until she died in 1919. In 1977, President Carter reinstated Dr. Walker's Congressional Medal of Honor, and in 1982, the U.S. Postal Service issued a stamp with her picture on it, wearing a dress. One of the most interesting gender non-conforming veterans in history has to be Katherine Williams, a former slave who worked as a cook and a laundress for the 8th Indiana during the Civil War. After she gained her freedom, she learned in 1866 that African American men served in the military in their own division. Being the adventurous type and possessing a free spirit, Kathy Williams changed her name to William Kathy and joined the U.S. Army, becoming the first and only female Buffalo soldier. Serving in Company A of the 38th Infantry, stationed at Fort Cummings, New Mexico, she participated in fighting the Chiricahua Apaches in that part of the country. In 1868, she became tired of the military life and revealed to the fort's doctor that she was female. After she received her discharge from military service, she remained in the West until her death in 1892. The U.S. Army recognizes her as the first African American woman to have served in the Army. During the Spanish-American War and World War I, the medical examinations became more detailed, so women could no longer get by serving as men. Also, we had very little information about actual trans people, specifically male to females, who served during these two wars. However, the possibility of men who served in either of those wars but cross-dressed after the war seems highly likely to have occurred. The trans community does know of one gender non-conforming individual involved in the Spanish-American War era, Jack B. Garland. He didn't serve in the military, but became an embedded reporter for the Stockholm Evening Mail during the Filipino War of 1899 under the name of Beebe Beam. He did not participate in combat, but witnessed the Battle of San Mateo and joined several marches throughout the island of Luzon. Beam accompanied United States military forces to Santa Cruz, Laguna de Bay, Camarines, and Caloocan, as well as Manila and smaller garrisons. In the biography of Garland, written by Lou Sullivan in 1990, Sullivan pointed out that Beebe Beam was well liked by the soldiers and they considered him their mascot. At the end of the war, to show their respect at what Beam went through, they called him Captain Jack. During World War II, several trans people served our country. One was the famous Ed Wood, who joined the Marines during World War II, and in later life, he stated that he wore a bra and panties under his uniform into the Battle of Guadalcanal. However, Wood's real claim to fame came after the war when he made a career in directing movies, which appeared so bad that in later years became cult classics. Those movies earned him the title of Worst Director of All Time in 1978, long after his death. This clip out of Wood's movie Glenn or Glenda will probably seem eerily familiar to many transgender and gender non-conforming veterans.
Then came the fateful year of 1941. Allen was drafted. He was accepted. In the Army, he successfully passed his vigorous training. He did not like it, but then there were the weekends for his particular diversions. On his weekend passes, he would go to the nearest town where he had a suitcase checked in a public locker. In the suitcase, he had the things he loved to wear, that which made his body appear to be what his mind believed it was. Then the day of embarkation came. But wherever Allen went, the suitcase was sure to go.
Wood spoke from experience. Christine Jorgensen became one of the most famous transgender veterans of all time, being drafted into the Army in November 1945, even though that happened after the Japanese surrendered on August 14th, 1945. The Department of Defense considered anyone who entered the military before December 31st, 1946 as World War II veterans. Jorgensen made headlines in December 1952 when she arrived in New York from Denmark after her sex change operation. a procedure now referred to as sex reassignment surgery or gender reassignment surgery. She became the first publicly known trans woman and even knocked the testing of the first hydrogen bomb off the front page. One headline read, "Ex-GI becomes blonde beauty." Christine Jorgensen spent time in the entertainment business after she came back from Denmark and became an icon in the trans community. She wrote a book of her experiences called Christine Jorgensen, a personal biography, and died in 1989, just shy of her 63rd birthday. Another World War II transgender veteran is Jane Fee. Born in 1927, G.I. Jane, as she likes to call herself, first enlisted in the Pennsylvania Reserve Defense Corps in 1943. After moving to Maryland in 1944, she enlisted in the State Guard Brigade. Fee enlisted into the regular Army in 1946, just under the deadline to be considered a World War II veteran. Being one of the last people to become a World War II veteran, Fee has made a goal to be the last living veteran from that war. Jane Fee has been very active in the community throughout her life, fighting for LGBT rights in Minnesota in the 1990s and helping the state to create one of the country's first fully inclusive non-discrimination laws. She served on the board of the International Foundation for Gender Education, won the Transgender Law Conference's Pioneer Award in 1994, and the Trinity Award in 1995. She became the first trans person to be a delegate to the Democratic National Convention in 2000 and won the Virginia Prince Award in 2001. She was also the oldest member of the Transgender American Veterans Association. Transgender veterans have served during the Korean War, and one was Linda Bedore. She joined the Navy in 1950 and served on the USS Rodman until honorably discharged in 1954. In just under 4 years, she reached the rank of pipe fitter first class. After the Navy, Bedore worked in construction, then owned a dune buggy shop in Arizona for 27 years and retired in 2004 at the age of 73. She raised 6 children. A Vietnam War transgender veteran, Tassi Zuriak, served in the Air Force from 1964 to 1975 and got out as a captain. Monica Helms came from a long line of military people, including her grandfather, father, all of her uncles, one aunt, her brother, her brother's son, and her son. Serving 8 years in the Navy, she trained in naval nuclear power, stationed on 2 submarines, and got out as a submarine qualified machinist mate first class with an honorable discharge. She raised 2 sons. Shortly after Monica started her transition, she got thrust into activism in Arizona, then moved to Georgia in 2000. In Georgia, she became active locally and nationally and co-founded the Transgender American Veterans Association in early 2003. She created the first transgender pride flag in 1999, won the Trinity Award in 2003, was elected as a delegate to the Democratic National Convention in 2004, and won the Fantasia Fair Pioneer Award in 2011. During all of this, she worked for Sprint for 25 years, retiring in January 2015. In 2014, Monica donated the original transgender pride flag to the Smithsonian. One of the most interesting trans women to serve our country is Diane Schroeder, a highly decorated Army veteran. Diane spent 25 years in the Army and served in Special Forces as an officer. After 9/11, the Department of Defense handpicked her to operate a secret unit of 120 people dedicated to stopping terrorist activities. The intense job occasionally had her reporting to Vice President Dick Cheney on their activities. Schroeder became particularly notable in the trans community because of the lawsuit she and the ACLU filed against the Library of Congress in 2005. The Library of Congress created a position to study terrorism in the world and needed someone to fill that position. The position had been tailor-made for Schroeder's extensive experience, and after several months of interviews, they offered her the job. However, when she told them she would be starting her transition from male to female, they rescinded the offer. The ACLU filed a lawsuit under Title VII sex discrimination and won the case in 2008. Schroeder also appeared before the House Committee on Education and Labor to speak on LGBT job discrimination based on her experiences with the Library of Congress.
I am here today because in fall 2004, I applied and interviewed for the position of Specialist in Terrorism and International Crime with the Congressional Research Service of the Library of Congress. In December, I was told I had been selected for the position, and after some rapid salary negotiations, I accepted the job. So I invited my future supervisor to lunch so I could tell her about my plans and help her ensure everything went smoothly. I explained that I had a female gender identity and was going to be living full-time as a female. My intent was to start when I commenced work at CRS. The following day she called and said that after a long and sleepless night, she decided I was not a good fit for the library. In 24 hours, I had gone from a welcome addition to the staff to someone who was not a good fit.
Autumn Sandine spent 20 years in the Navy and retired in 2000 as a fire controlman first class. During her 20 years, she served on 4 ships, and in the last few years of her service, she had been sexually harassed by shipmates because she appeared to them as being too effeminate. Her executive officer tried to investigate her under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but she successfully fought it and won. Since retiring, Autumn has become one of the most respected bloggers in the LGBT community, writing for the award-winning blog Pam's House Blend for several years. In 2010, she decided to take her activism to another level by chaining herself to the White House fence twice, along with LGB veterans in protest of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Even though the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell would do nothing for transgender and gender non-conforming people, she decided to take a stand on this issue. The police arrested her both times. Now that Don't Ask, Don't Tell has been repealed, she has become a strong advocate for allowing transgender people to serve openly in the military. A trans man by the name of Sir Jesse McNulty joined the Army in 1985 and became a military police officer. His command quickly recognized his photojournalistic talents and assigned him to a position where he could use his skills. McNulty ended up writing and editing for the military community newspaper, The Town Crier, and the 18th Engineer Brigade's Sword and Castle. In 1987, his command named him the 21st Support Command's Journalist of the Year. Sir Jesse has a master's degree in education and teaches in the DeKalb County school system in Georgia. He has contributed on many levels in the community, facilitates a weekly support group called Trans and Friends, and has been a member of the Feminist Outlaws since 2003. On several occasions, McNulty has participated in the Atlanta Pride Color Guard and became one of the founding members of the Georgia Safe Schools Coalition. Calpurnia Adams has become one of the most well-known trans veterans in the world. In the late 1980s, she enlisted in the Navy to escape a strict fundamentalist household and served 4 years as a field medical combat specialist. The Navy first stationed her in the Middle East during the First Gulf War, and then later in Adak, Alaska. After the Navy discharged Adams, she moved to Nashville, Tennessee to eventually work as an entertainer in the city's largest drag club. In 1999, she fell in love with a young soldier stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky by the name of Barry Winchell. On the 4th of July weekend of that year, a fellow soldier, egged on by another soldier, brutally beat Winchell to death. Their love story and Winchell's murder became the subject of the 2003 award-winning movie called Soldier's Girl. Today, Adams has become one of the trans community's most respected spokeswomen for equality. She has won countless awards for her positive image of our community and her work in helping others to become who they are. Joanna Clarke joined the U.S. Naval Reserves in 1955 at the age of 17. 2 years later, she went on active duty and attended the Naval Aviation Electronics School. She stayed in until 1969, then entered the Navy Reserve. After her surgery in 1975, she joined the Army Reserve, but they discharged her nearly 2 years later, saying she was disqualified in all aspects, physically and psychologically. In 1988, Joanna Clarke became Sister Mary Elizabeth Clarke and served in the American Catholic Church, an independent church that follows Catholic rites. In 1990, inspired by a young man with AIDS in Missouri, Sister Mary Elizabeth started Aegis, which became the largest database for HIV and AIDS in the world. She has won countless awards for her work in the field. Today, she has returned to being Joanna Clarke, resigning as a nun. Denise Brogan Cator served in the U.S. Navy from 1972 to 1976, stationed on the submarine USS Grayback, and became a quartermaster second class. While on board the sub, she got the nickname of Debbie because she appeared so effeminate. One high-ranking petty officer forced her to have sex with him so she could get his signature on her submarine qualification card. After the Navy, she earned a master's degree in business and worked in the business world, cross-dressing in her off time. In 2004, she received a law degree and worked for the Service Members Legal Defense Fund, helping gay, lesbian, and bisexual service members accused under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Denise formed the Rainbow Law Center with partner and spouse Mary Cator, and in 2009 she attended the USS Grayback reunion. Everyone accepted her wholeheartedly. Jennifer Dinklau served in the Navy from 1963 to 1967 in a helicopter squadron on the USS Luce. She was declared 100% disabled by the VA several years after being discharged. Today, Jennifer is a member of the Disabled American Veterans and has become the first trans person to be elected as commander at a post for the Veterans of Foreign Wars located in northern Arizona. Pauline Overby received her draft notice in 1966 and arranged to be sent into the Air Force. She trained in reciprocating engines and became the first in her class. In 1968, the Air Force assigned her to the 56th Combat Support Unit in Thailand, and she stayed in until her discharge in 1969. In 1999, Pauline had her surgery and got a divorce from her wife in 2001. She remarried in 2002, this time to a man. Her husband died in 2004. She worked in the trans community in her state and spent time as the secretary for the Transgender American Veterans Association. Garcia served in the Army from 1968 to 1971, then joined the Coast Guard Reserves from 1971 to 1973. After joining the Army Reserves from 1973 to 1978, she trained as a field corpsman. She then joined the Army National Guard from 1978 to 1979. After serving in all those different branches of service, Cameron became a civilian EMT and a federal police officer. From 1990 to 1995, she joined the Air Force Reserves and served as a security police officer. In 2005, Cameron became the first Filipina trans woman in the cast of the Transsexual Vagina Monologues in San Francisco. She now speaks at high schools, colleges, and universities on transgender issues from a law enforcement and medical standpoint. Sammy Lynette Garrett joined the Navy in 1979, right after high school, and became a machinist mate serving on the USS Mauna Kea until her honorable discharge in 1983. After the military, Sammy worked as a restaurant manager and owned her own construction company. She earned a bachelor's degree in healthcare information management at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona. Barbara Babs Sipperstein has become one of the most influential transgender women in the country. She began her military service in 1964, serving in the Army's 78th Infantry Division. She stayed in the Army until 1970. Babs earned her MBA at Pace University and later became the co-managing director of North Sipperstein Incorporated, a member of the Edison Municipal Alliance, the CEO of Sipperstein Ford's Paint Corporation, and a trustee for Congregation Bet Mordecai. She got married in 1977 and was widowed in 2001. She has 3 children. What makes Babs so influential in the trans community is that she became involved in the local and national Democratic Party, becoming the chair of the DNC Relations Committee. She has attended 3 Democratic National Conventions as a delegate from New Jersey and will be at the 2016 convention as a superdelegate. She was elected to the board of the Democratic National Committee in 2009 as the first openly transgender person. Dr. Robin Walters graduated from the Naval Academy in 1960 and went on to receive a PhD in naval engineering from MIT in 1971. She had an extensive naval career for 20 years and retired as a full commander. Afterwards, Robin worked as a Navy maintenance engineering contractor on one level or another from 1980 until 2010. She has been a project manager 3 times, once as a male and twice as a female. In 1999, Robin met Emery, and in 2000 they got married. Between them, they have 8 children, 15 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. They now live in Maui, where Robin volunteers at the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary, and she scuba dives in her spare time. Over the years, Robin has been involved with transgender activism, working with organizations such as the National Center for Transgender Equality, the Transgender American Veterans Association, the Transgender Network, and the Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. Evan Young grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and would play with Tonka trucks and cars in the dirt. As a very young child, he refused to wear dresses. In junior high, Evan began playing various sports and excelled at softball. Evan tried to get into West Point and the Naval Academy, but in high school he blew out his knee. Because Evan was a straight-A student, he received a scholarship to Arkansas State, but in his sophomore year he joined the Army. He received his commission from the U.S. Army in 1998 through a scholarship in the Army Reserve Officers Training Corps Green to Gold program. He started his transition in 2011 and retired from the Army as a major in 2013. He earned several service commendations and medals. He has twin daughters, and today he's the board president of the Arkansas Transgender Equality Coalition and the president of the Transgender American Veterans Association. He has also worked with Sparta and was named one of the top 25 visionaries in Arkansas by the Arkansas Times in their annual Visionaries issue. Dana Walker was raised in LaPorte, Indiana, and enlisted in the Army right out of high school. She served 25 years as a military police officer and as a market intelligence officer with the United States Army Recruiting Command. She got out as an Army First Sergeant promotable. Dana also worked as a federal investigator for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and a regional sales manager for Humana Military Veterans Initiative, responsible for parts of the western U.S. She graduated cum laude from Columbia Southern University with a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration and received an MBA from Liberty University. She is currently pursuing a Master's in Counseling Psychology at Troy University. She is also a former president of Transgender American Veterans Association, and she rides a Harley. In January 2015, the National LGBT Bar Association helped her get her DD-214 changed with her legal name. Created in the 1950s by the Department of Defense, the DD-214 is a discharge document that was considered written in stone. Because of the LGBT Bar Association, trans veterans will now have their DD-214 changed to reflect their legal name. As we have seen, transgender and gender non-conforming people have served our country with distinction and honor while in the military. Many have gone on to serve their country and their communities with equal distinction and honor. In a recent transgender discrimination survey called Injustice at Every Turn, it showed that 20% of gender non-conforming people have served in the military, compared to 10% for the general population. The National Center for Transgender Equality and the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force put together the survey, and they had nearly 6,500 trans people fill it out. Why have trans people had to stay closeted and silent about who they are when they serve this country? They have done such an excellent job for our military. 20 of our allied nations allow trans people to serve openly. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter announced on January 15, 2016, that the Pentagon has worked out all the details of allowing trans people to serve openly in the U.S. military starting sometime in the spring of 2016. The Republican presidential candidates have stepped all over themselves trying to be the one who could say the nastiest things they could say about trans people. Time will show that they are all on the wrong side of history. I am Dr. Darlene Wagner saying thank you for watching.